There are 5 reasons why I think Arsenal will not win the league, and here we are to talk about them. And of course, before we start, you need to smash that like button and of course subscribe to my channel for more daily content around football, especially what's happening in the Premier League. The first and the most obvious reason is of course the transfer window and how Arsenal has behaved during this period. And I'm not even talking about the January transfer window, because all these problems started in the summer. And at first I was going to blame the board, but then I thought about it more and I realized that Arteta should be held accountable as well. And I don't think just Arteta, I'm thinking about Arteta, Edu, and whoever was involved in transfer decisions. I think they need to be blamed even more than the board, because Arsenal's management has spent a lot of money over the past few seasons, and the real problem is that this amount of money was spent only to bring in defenders and number 6 and goalkeepers, and it wasn't a balanced form of spending to rebuild this team over different departments of the pitch. Rebuilding a team is a very, very hard thing to do, and that's why I deeply believe that Arteta shall never be compared to Arne Slot, because Slot inherited a Liverpool that is already built. Arteta should be compared to Jurgen Klopp, because when Klopp arrived at Liverpool, he didn't have a good squad and he started rebuilding that team. The exact same thing that Arteta is doing in Arsenal. But the difference is, Mikel Arteta has brought in players that sometimes do not heal the wounds that Arsenal is suffering. And to be honest, I believe that Arteta inherited a far better side than Jurgen Klopp, because when Klopp arrived, the only player that maybe he could rely on for the future, of course, was Bobby Firmino and maybe Felipe Coutinho, who left. But when Arteta arrived, there were already great players in this side. We're talking about Bukayo Saka, we're talking about Martinelli, we're talking about Saliba, who was loaned out. And Arteta had an easier job, actually, I think, to rebuild this team. And to be honest, I don't think he's done a good job at this. The second reason for this bad season Arsenal is having could be the numerous injuries they're dealing with. And from the very beginning of the season, they've lost players like Timber, Tomiyasu, Odegaard, Partey, of course, Bukayo Saka, Ben White, and we could go on in this list. They've lost these players to injuries, and the reason for this, aside from the bad luck, could be the amount of minutes these players are playing and the pressure they're handling. And I know that Arsenal do not have a good bench to rely on, and that's again a result of not being good in transfer windows. But I remember a time when Jurgen Klopp did not have a good bench as well at Liverpool, and every time in domestic cups he relied on younger players, academy products. I mean, not far ago Jurgen Klopp managed to win the EFL Cup with Virgil van Dijk and a bunch of kids against Chelsea. He relied on those young players no matter how important the game was. It could be a semi-final or a final. And because of that, the main players could rest. And not just that, we could identify pure talents in our squad. And of course, Mikel Arteta has done that with Ranieri and Lewis Skelly, but he wouldn't have done it if players wouldn't get injured. He somehow had to use them and find out how good they are. But you need to do that before players get injured. And finding out these players in your squad would actually bring in more money, because a lot of those players that played against Chelsea in that EFL Cup final for Liverpool were sold in the summer and were sold for good money actually. And if they were not sold, they are now used in our team. I'm talking about Kelleher, I'm talking about Connor Bradley, I'm talking about Jadon Dance. All these players were discovered in domestic cups, and Arteta needs to do that more often. Because I believe Arsenal has a good academy and there are a lot of great products there. You could look at Bukayo Saka and Martinelli, you could look at Ranieri and Skelly. All these players were produced in Arsenal's academy. So why not use younger players more often in domestic cups, resting your main players and of course discovering new talents? Another reason that I think Arsenal is not having a great season is the lack of flexibility in playing style of Mikel Arteta. And if you ask Arsenal fans, they tell you that Arsenal used to play better last season and the season before that. Because in the modern football, in these modern days, you cannot stick to the same style of play over and over and over, because there are some great world-class managers in this league who would found your tactics out. They'd find your tactics out and find solutions for them. And you could say that about Pep Guardiola as well, because you can see that now teams are having better solutions against position-based football. There are some great managers in this league. Emery, Iraola, Nuno, and I don't know, Eddie Howe. You cannot win a league if your tactics are found out. You need to be flexible. You need to approach every game differently, because every game has its own story. You need to be flexible and tweak things, change things based on your opposition and the situation that you're in. And I've seen that with Slot. Against Manchester City and against Aston Villa, of course, Slot didn't start the game with a striker. Instead, he used 2 10s and relied on the work rate of Dominic Szoboszlai. And yes, it didn't work against Aston Villa because of our bad luck in finishing our chances. But god damn it, how it worked against Manchester City. And yes, some days he asks our players to go on and play a position-based football. And some days he relies on transitions and counter-attacks. But I don't see that with Mikel Arteta. Because if he had done some changes, maybe he would have won the game against West Ham. You do not have a striker, so change your game. Mikel Merino, of course, started as a striker, but he was doing everything that Kai Havertz does every time, only worse. So yes, changing and being flexible in your tactics and in your style of play could definitely work, could definitely help. The fourth reason for Arsenal's failure in this season, possible failure of course, is the bad mentality, the weak mentality, and the unprofessional behavior of players. It's not fair to put all the blame on the board and Arteta, because these players have displayed poor attitude in many matches and they haven't showed up like real winners. And one example for that could be picking unnecessary red cards. I know refereeing has been a big issue for Arsenal, but when you know that referees are waiting for a moment to punish you, you should be more careful. And after Declan Rice was sent off for touching the ball after the game being stopped, you tell yourself, well, Arteta has gathered these players and told them, don't do that. But again, against Manchester City, Leonardo Trossard does the exact same thing and gets a red card. And that's on you. That's on the players. And engaging in a psychological battle with Manchester City players. I mean, I know Erling Haaland started that when he said, stay humble. But to be honest, they can say that. They can do that because they are winners. They won multiple trophies over the last few seasons. They have every right to do that. But you, I'm talking to players, you haven't won anything. You haven't done anything to deserve bantering like that. Yes, I enjoy the bantering football. I have videos in the past that I've showed I'm enjoying it. But Arsenal players should be more humble, and that's a fact. Liverpool is humble. They're winning the league, and they are humble. They just defeated City with 2 goals. Did they celebrate like Haaland? No. Did they knee slide for all the stadium? No, they didn't. And that's being humble. That's being calm. That's being smart, staying away from psychological battles and focusing on what's in front of you. And players like Odegaard, who's supposed to be the captain of this team, and Declan Rice, who's been bought for big money, they do not show up when they're most needed. And they decide to stay in the shadows when the team really and actually needs them. That doesn't inspire the younger people in this team, the younger guys. You're supposed to be the captains of this team, the leaders of this team. So against a side like West Ham, against Newcastle, people expect you to show up and do even more than you do usually. And the last reason is that they're up against Liverpool. Yes, it is that simple. This Liverpool team has been preparing for Manchester City's decline for years now. And they know when to show up. And Liverpool 2.0 version is a better team than what Mikel Arteta has built. It's that simple. My team is filled with legends and winners, and is filled with hard-working young talents. And in general, we truly have a better team than Arsenal. So it's not a big surprise. Of course, nobody expected Arne Slot to do it in his first season. Nobody gave us our flowers in the beginning of the season. Now everybody's trying to say, oh yeah, it makes sense because Arne Slot inherited a great squad. Yeah, you knew that. in the beginning of the season, but you said we were going to finish at 4th, 7th. Some people said Manchester United is going to finish above us. Some people said Arne Slot is lucky to be in this position as a Liverpool manager. You didn't give us our flowers in the beginning of the season. So now do not act like you knew it was going to happen. It was supposed to be Arsenal's season. But anyways, next season, if people like Salah and Van Dijk leave us, it will give Arsenal another great chance of winning the league, because Man City needs at least another season for rebuilding, and we're going to be down to those players that are leaving us, and it will obviously be a great chance for Arsenal to finish first after all these years. But anyways, we know Arsenal. They're Netflix FC, always waiting for another season. So if they don't win the league next season, I wouldn't be surprised as well. But you could also tell me what you think are the reasons for this bad season that are Arsenal having, and tell me what you think down below in the comments. Share your thoughts with me. Smash the like button, and of course subscribe to my channel. It will help me grow as fast as possible, and I'll really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for watching this video, and have a good one.